Hello, everyone. We welcome you back to our channel. We are just letting you know that we are observing something very special for the month of July. It is BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. And this was formerly called B.B. Moore Campbell Minority Mental Health Month in honor of the author and mental health activist to whom we owe the gratitude for this holiday and this observance during the month of July. But we now call it BIPOC Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is a time for us to further elevate concerns that we already pay attention to throughout the year. But today I have a very special guest for my tea moment with our very own Pat Vereen here at the Armstrong Center for Hope. So I am going to ask Pat to introduce herself and to tell us a little bit about who she is, what her training and her experiences have been in the area of mental health. So, Pat, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Pat Vereen, and I am a native of Durham, and I am a licensed clinical um, social work associate and a licensed clinical addiction specialist. And I received my master's of social work degree from North Carolina Central University.
Go Eagles.
Yes. And so I am currently receiving supervision for the clinical therapy, and I am focusing in on mainly adults, older adolescents, and couples. And my experience comes from I did academic advising for over 12 years at Duke University, and we received training so we could understand students when they were going through mental health crises. And we were able to refer them to CAPS, which is the counseling and psychological services there. And so that made me more aware of the clinical and the mental health experience of young adults and how it presents itself as far as issues. I'm also happily married for almost 20 years to my husband, who is an ordained minister. And we do premarital counseling for couples, and we do marriage counseling for couples as well when they go through challenges. So that's those are two groups that I really focus in on. But for every all other individuals, I focus in on cognitive behavior therapy and also integrated therapy because I really like to get an assessment of the person and kind of utilize different modalities because each person is unique and everyone has different experiences they bring, different emotions that they bring, and trying to process their behaviors, systems. So those are the types of experiences that I've had and training that I've had in mental health.
Got it. Got it. So it sounds like with your academic advising, that exposed you to a population of young adults,
Yes,
emerging adults, as we say.
absolutely.
And so it sounds like you have quite a bit of insight
Mhm.
into working with that population.
Yes.
And then with the couples work that you do, you not only are teaching from the things that you learned about in your textbooks,
Mhm.
but you have real lived experience
Yes,
of
for
20
sure.
years
Yes,
that I'm sure is very valuable to people that you
absolutely.
work with. Okay. And then you mentioned CBT or cognitive behavior therapy. Do you find that you sometimes encounter issues with clients who have trauma?
Absolutely. And so there is sometimes trauma focused cognitive behavior therapy that we have to see that understand that the trauma is driving how the person processes things, whether it is how they view themselves or how they view the world. And so we I try to focus in on if they are have experienced trauma, focus in on how that trauma is impacting them and how we need to um, maybe change behaviors or discuss how they view themselves or be more reflective of how they view society and their experience in society. So,
Right. So sounds like you really take the trauma history into
absolutely,
account as you're figuring out how to make the best interventions and
absolutely,
create change. That's
absolutely.
the point of therapy, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay. Very good. Very good. So, Pat, what would you say sort of drew you into this line of work with, so many things that
Mm.
you could do with your skill set?
So, what drew me into therapy? It's funny because I my as I matured in my professional career, I kind of said to myself that I want to the second half of my life do what my passion is, and so from my experience in dealing with just people in general, people have always said, "Well, you have a very insightful, listening." Um, attribute and you are very motivational in challenging people to change. And so I took that and was like, okay, what is it that my gift is or the insight that has been placed in me. And so I decided to go back to school and get my master's degree and and go into clinical therapy so I can help people get into and understand that they can have lasting change. Because most people who encounter, whether it's trauma or just challenging in navigating life, I think that they want change and that they don't always know how to get there. So, as a therapist, that we're there to support them and help them navigate life.
Yes. Yes. And I think a key word that you just mentioned is lasting change. We all can get excited and make a change temporarily,
Right.
but they say it takes at least 22 days to create a habit.
Habits. Yeah.
And sometimes for long standing challenges that we've had, it's going to take even more.
Yes.
But that's what therapists like you are all about, is
Absolutely.
creating that lasting change.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I might add change that can endure through generations.
Yes, for sure.
Right? Because a lot of us come into therapy with a sense of some generational challenges,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Yes. So, as you all know, as our audience, the Armstrong Center for Hope is very focused on how it is that we can create a sense of hope. And not just when people are here in our space. We're in the Durham office today, but what happens when someone comes in for an hour of therapy and then they're gone for a week, right? How do they sustain hope? So tell us a little bit about ways that you might help your clients to think through or to begin to experience more hope.
So I believe that self reflection is a gift that each individual should give themselves into the world. And so having, I guess I want to, it is motivational interviewing, I'll say it that way, that when you're talking to someone and you're kind of asking questions or getting feedback from them is kind of motivating them, helping them feel comfortable. So building a rapport, getting them, having them understand what therapy is all about. So when they're asking questions, giving clear, concise, understandable answers, and so that they can kind of grow in whether they had biases or was unsure, it would help them to be clear on what we're providing, and it is a partnership. How we are working together. The client is bringing the things that they have experienced, and we're bringing evidence-based care to them. And so we want to develop a relationship that bring forth again, like you said, that lasting change that will endure through generations.
Yes, yes. And I really want to reinforce what you said about evidence-based care, right? Because um, often we know that there was a challenge. We've tried other ways to address the challenge, but we might still think that I don't really need therapy. I have good friends. They'll listen to me.
Right.
Right. And listening is a great gift.
It
It
is.
is a rare gift.
Mhm.
But the beautiful thing about therapy is that it goes beyond that non judgmental listening to incorporating those evidence based therapies that have been proven to work with other populations. And especially as a person who is moving around the world as a black female, you have a sense of what are the things that are relevant to me and people who have similar experiences to me, as well as being populations.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, what would you say to someone, because we encounter this often and we understand how this is the way that sometimes people think about therapy, but they might be struggling, but they're not really sure that they really need to come to therapy, right? They might say, well, I'm not crazy, or I don't have a diagnosis, or maybe I might have a diagnosis. I don't want to know the diagnosis, but there are all of these things that sometimes are barriers to us
Yes.
coming into therapy. So, what would you say to someone who maybe was on the fence about
Mm.
coming to therapy?
Well, one thing I love about Armstrong Center for Hope, we tend to, well, we do a very detailed, thorough job in assessing a person, whether it is they've had some history in therapy or they have a diagnosis or whatever they've had. So the assessment and evaluation, even if you just come to get that, just to kind of see where I am in this moment, um, would build a foundation to say, okay, now what? And so getting just an assessment to understand, I think I'm having some challenges. I'm not sure. I'm not even understanding what am I feeling here. So getting an assessment and evaluation to just get a um, just an understanding of what's happening to me, because sometimes people don't even really understand what's going on. So one thing about Armstrong Center for Hope, we do evaluations and assessments, very thorough ones, to make sure that we have a baseline for each client coming in. And so I think that's very important to have that. And so if a person isn't sure, I would suggest that they just come have an assessment. Not even sure if I want to, talk to anybody, but maybe I just need to do an assessment to kind of see where am I in this moment.
That is wonderful advice because if you don't really know what the issue is, what the problem
Mm-hmm.
is, how can you possibly create change? Right? You have to be able to have an
Yes.
understanding. And you are correct. We do a thorough assessment. We sometimes even do psychological testing because sometimes the questions can be best answered in that longer type of investigation and intervention. So that assessment goes a long way. And I don't know if our listeners have ever had this experience, but I had an experience just a few months ago where I needed to see a physical therapist. And I found out that my insurance actually had a digital physical therapist available. It's like, oh, this is new. This is in vogue. Let me try it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through that program for about 2.5, 3 months. But I started figuring out that they had not thoroughly assessed me.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the interventions, they had great videos of what I was
Right.
supposed to do and which exercises, but they were barking up the wrong tree
Ooh.
because they had not thoroughly assessed what the issue
Yeah.
was. So I would invite our listeners to just think about the power and the value of having a thorough assessment to set forth treatment goals in the course of therapy. Well, very good. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about the Armstrong Center for Hope, about your services, about you as a person?
Well, I believe that therapy, well, I think in our culture today, therapy is getting there a lot of exposure in social media and different things like that. You're, different opportunities to get therapy. And I think it's like kind of like you want to have something custom to yourself.
Mhm.
And I think Armstrong Center for Hope, we do that. We kind of, with the assessment and everything, we build a custom care treatment package for each person. And I think that is very valuable. So it's very important to make sure that you have good fits with whether it's with, a therapist or getting someone tested or various things. And so I really think it's important for there to a person to make sure that they want to give themselves the best care possible. And I think that we offer that here at Armstrong Center.
Yes, agreed. Yes, and you are a big part of that, so thank you. So, you all, Pat is one of the newest additions to our staff. As you can hear, she is fantastic in terms of her preparation, the way she thinks about engaging in therapy. So, we appreciate you for that. And so, because you are fairly new to our staff, it seems as though you do still have some availability for appointments.
Absolutely.
All right. And you are here in the Durham office a few days
Yes.
a week, but also available for telehealth as well, right?
Yes.
And those services are available across the state of North Carolina. So just want to make sure to spread the word about that too.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Pat, thank you so much for not only sharing with us for a few minutes, but also being such an important force at the Armstrong